The Russian Revolution, a presentation created by Francis Strela and narrated by Francis and Glenn Strela. The Russian Revolution refers to the pair of revolutions in Russia in 1917. These revolutions undid the Tsarist autocracy and led to the eventual rise of the Soviet Union. In March of 1917, growing civil unrest combined with the long-lasting food shortages erupted into open revolt. This forced the resignation of Nicholas II, the last Russian Tsar. Months later, the newly installed provisional government was itself overthrown by the more radical Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin. Causes of the Russian Revolution. Simply put, industrialization is known to be a direct cause for the Russian Revolution. Another cause can be seen through Russia's history, as absolute monarchy was the government for hundreds of years in Russia. The Tsars ruled Russia. Royal families and dynasties shaped the Russian culture. Nicholas II of the Romanov bloodline came into power and floundered. His reign was plagued with disaster. Through World War I, there were 10 million Russian casualties. Besides these lasting effects of both world wars, Russia as a whole was divided in itself, both politically and socio-economically. The Russian people were divided between the philosophy of Marxism and the ideals of Marxist-Leninism. Those who followed the philosophy of Marxism, or the ideology of Marx, were known as the proletarians. These people were workers who never got ahead and only worked for wages. Those who followed the ideals of Marxist-Leninism, which was a combination of Marxism and Vladimir Lenin's views, were known as the bourgeoisie, consisting of property owners, merchants, and business owners. They were the class of people who worked less, made more money, and had a better quality of life. These two classes split the Russian world. The proletarians joined together with the hopes of creating a socialistic government. Communism becomes a stateless system of utopia in which everyone shares, gives, and takes away what they need, and it will work out for the betterment of all. Marxist-Leninism ideology stated that for the Russian people, if they wait for this to happen, it will fail. They needed a socialistic structure necessary for communism to prevail. One can say that a cause of the Russian Revolution would be that the 1905 revolution directly influenced and caused the 1917 revolution, wherein Russian workers went on strike due to working over 13-hour days and having little to no rights. They formed a group called the Soviets. A major event or battle in the revolution became known as Bloody Sunday or Red Sunday. This took place in St. Petersburg, Russia, when unarmed demonstrators were fired upon by soldiers of the Imperial Guard as they marched towards the Winter Palace to present a petition to Tsar Nicholas II of Russia. The number killed is uncertain, but the Tsar's officials recorded 96 dead and 333 injured. Anti-government sources claimed that more than 4,000 were found dead. Moderate estimates still range around 1,000 killed or wounded, both from gunshot wounds or being trampled during the panic. The outcomes of this forced Nicholas II to write an October Manifesto, or Duma, to appease the Russian people. This would give the Russians a right of representation, and eventually Nicholas II dissolved the Duma and the war became inevitable.
The two significant revolutions for the Russians were the February Revolution and the October Revolution of 1917. The February Revolution took place in Petrograd, now known as St. Petersburg, Russia. In this, the whole city shut down, revolting against the Tsar Nicholas II. The provisional government began running things. The bourgeoisie government, Social Democrats, wanted ownership, wanted to vote, and believed in capitalism. Alexander Kerensky became the head of the provisional government. Under his reign, the country made a big mistake by not getting out of World War I. Due to this, the economy crashed, and this caused the people to starve, riot, and mass chaos ensued. The Soviet class became more well known during this time. It represented interests of workers. They saw themselves as political lobby groups, seen today as unions. Lenin and his group of Bolsheviks, who were a Russian Social Democratic Workers' Party, seized control of the government of Russia in October of 1917. Due to this seizure, the Bolsheviks became the dominant political party. In April of 1917, Lenin had Germany behind him, aiding in his return to Russia. Germany's interest was, if they helped Lenin, Russia would leave World War I. Lenin did not want the revolution at first in July in Petrograd. He then got exiled to Finland. In August, the military tried a coup to take over the provisional government. Kerensky gets the Bolsheviks to defend St. Petersburg. As he was called to defend Petrograd, he now owes his life to the Bolsheviks and, in return, allows Lenin to return to Russia. The October Revolution is known as the Coordinated Planned Revolution. Lenin enacted his plans through his control of the Soviets. With this power, he controlled major cities and utilized the Soviet vote, dissolving the provisional government and placing him in power of Russia.
This chain of events caused the formation of the Soviet Union in 1917. Lenin becomes the dictator of this new regime, and the effects of the Communist Revolution of 1917 resulted in an us versus them world for Russia. This resulted in the spread of communism everywhere around the world into the 20th century. Eventually, the Soviet Union had its own war of the White Army versus the Red Army. This Soviet Union Civil War lasted from 1918 to 1923. During this war, the White Army, or the group formed against communism with aid from Japan, Great Britain, and the United States, fights the Red Army, or the Communist Party. This war resulted in millions of deaths. The Soviet Union gets complete control of the communist government as an outcome of this war, and their first act was to ban other political parties, pluralism, democracy, and voting. As a result of this war, the Tsarist-type ruling dies. The Red Army did not want the legacy of Tsar Nicholas II to continue, so they killed him and his entire family. As Lenin and the Bolsheviks ended the Tsarist reign and established their Socialist Soviet Union, this began a powerful and ironclad way of life and established an almost cruel image that still follows the Russian people today.